Hello friends, welcome back to Program with Akshay, and we are continuing the AWS Step Function videos. So in this video we are going to start our project, AWS Step Function project. So this project is the real world use case of customer flow workflow, and in this project we are going to set up the infrastructure, we are going to see the error handling, and we are going to see the actual workflow of contact of a customer application workflow. So this video we are going to segregate this project into two parts. The first part we are going to set up the actual infrastructure, that is SNS, Lambda, DynamoDB, how we are going to see our error handling. So this is the part which we are going to see, and in the next part we are going to see the actual customer form workflow. So without further ado, let's start with the video. So this is what we are going to do. So first we are going to start. So this is a state where we are going to start our contact workflow. Second, it will validate. The Lambda will validate. If it is valid, either it is yes or no. We are going to save. If it is a valid yes, we are going to save into the DynamoDB. And once the customer form is saved into the DynamoDB, we are going to send an email notification to the end user, and it will end. If it is a no, we are going to notify the admin that it is not a valid customer, and we are going to end the contact workflow, our customer workflow application. So in this project, or in this part, what we are going to see, let me take up my pen, and yes, and we are going to see. So we are going to create a customer workflow, and in the customer workflow we are going to see SNS, that is our first service. Second, we are going to see DynamoDB, and third we are going to see and Lambda, that is where we are validating, and fourth we are going to see error handling. Okay, so these are the parts which we are going to cover. So this is the SNS. So whatever you are seeing, this is an SNS service. This is a DynamoDB service, DDB, and this is an Lambda, AWS Lambda. So these are the services which we are going to look into the project, and this is a state where which is start state and end state, and these are the workflows which we are this is the workflow which we are going to see in this video. So let's start. So first, what then we will create a Lambda which will have a validation. If the customer has a name, username, and email ID, then it is a true, otherwise it will return a false. And then we will create an SNS, and inside the SNS we will create a topic and its respective subscription. So let's start. So I have my AWS console login, and inside the AWS we will create a DynamoDB table. So let's try to go to DynamoDB service, and inside the DynamoDB service, so first check the region, what exactly the region. So I'm in North Virginia region. So let's try to create a table. So we will create a simple table called as my customer table, and inside that we will select the partition key as ID. So we will give a table name as my customer table, and we will give a partition key as ID, and we will keep the default settings as it is, and we will try to create a table. So no much significance about it. So it's a simple table which has a name and which has a ID as the primary key. So we will try to create a function now. So let's try to go to the AWS Lambda function. Meanwhile, our table will get created, and we will try to create a function in the same region. Let's try to create a function. So I will create a function from scratch, and I will say customer function, and inside the function which will have a basic permission. So I will select the runtime as Node.js 20, and I will try to create a function. Once I try to create a new function, I will copy paste some of the code which has name, email address. So this is the function has been created. Let's try to navigate to code. It's loading. So once the code is there, yes, so I will delete this code and I will paste this. So which has, so we have a validation. So the customer might be having a name, it might be having an email address and some message. So if these three properties are there, we are returning true, otherwise we are returning false. And obviously these three properties like name, email and message we are getting from event. So we are logging an event, so validate data function, and we are logging the whole event, and from that event we are fetching those three properties, that means name, email and message. So it is either returning true or false. So it's a simple message. Let's try to save it. Let's try to deploy it. So let me deploy the function. So it is successfully updated and we can test the function. Okay, so and this will have a new payload. So I will pass a name and email ID and some message. Hi. I will save this and I will test a new event now. So this is throwing an error. Why is that so? So the issue was we are using the standard AS6 platform for creating this our Lambda in Node.js platform. So we need to declare the handler, and we are declaring an handler as exports con. We have seen this in AWS CDK, so that has resolved the issues. Now let's try to test the function. So inside the test function, we have the payload called as name, email and message. Okay, so let's try to test it, and it should return validation as true. That means validated as successful as true. And if I try to remove the name and test the function again, it should return me as false. Okay, so this is how I'm returning a true or false. That means if the payload has name, email address and message, it will return true, and if the payload doesn't have either of these, then it will return a false. And we are logging the event. So this is the start request ID, this is the end request ID, and this is the complete event. That means the payload which we are throwing the request body. So this is our Lambda function. So we have created the DynamoDB and we have created the Lambda function inside the same region. Now let's try to create an SNS topic and subscription inside the same region itself. So let's try to go to our SNS service, and inside the SNS service, let's try to create a new topic first. So we will go to dashboard, and inside the dashboard, we will try to create a new topic which is in the same North Virginia region. Let's try to create a new topic. So here we are going to see a standard type, where in the standard type we are going to see like which supports a protocol like SQS, Lambda, HTTP, email, mobile application endpoints. So in our case, we are going to select the protocol as email. So that is why I have select standard. You can select FIFO. So FIFO is nothing but whatever the messages are, that means whatever the topics or whatever the message has come first, it will generate an email, it will send an email. So in this case, I will select standard and I will give a design name. So project 1, customer flow step functions. I will copy this and I will paste it here, and I will keep the default settings as it is for encryption, access policy, data protection policy, and so on and so forth. So we'll create a topic. After creating a topic, let me go to subscription and I will create a new subscription. And inside the topic ARN, we will see what we have selected, the project one customer step functions, which we have created a topic. This topic will get selected here. And the protocol, I am interested in email right now. So I will create an email endpoint. So in this endpoint, you are going to put your email address, which is going to subscribe to. That means whatever the Lambda is going to push the message through the topic, that means through the topic which has been created, we need an email address to subscribe to that endpoint. So in this case, we are going to put my email address and we are going to create a subscription. Once you create a subscription, you will receive an email from AWS. You need to acknowledge that. That means you need to confirm the subscription. Once the subscription is confirmed, you will get an message. That means you will get that means pending. Right now you can see the status is pending confirmation. Once you approve the confirmation, you will receive and you will update this status will update it as pending is. That means the confirmation is done. So I will approve the confirmation, and once the confirmation is approved, we will move to the next step. So my subscription is confirmed, and let's go back to the SNS, and inside the SNS, inside the subscription, if you see the status, it is as confirmed. So my subscription and everything is in place. Our DynamoDB table is been created. We have created Lambda. Now the next step is we are going to create a step function, and let's start with creating a step function. So inside the step function, we will select a design new workflow, and we will select a standard type. So let this get us load. So we'll get started and we will try to create a new step function. Okay, state machines, and inside the state machines, let me try to create a new state machine. I will select a blank state machine. So let me try to give an email or give a name. So this is standard, and I will give our execution rule. Let me create a new role, and I will keep everything as it is, and let me try to name this project 1 customer workflow. Okay, and now let's go to design, and inside the design, okay, so let me add an action. So our first action is nothing but an AWS Lambda. If you try to see the diagram, so we have AWS Lambda. That is our first action. Okay, so let's try to add an action, and then we will try to add a choice, and after a choice it will have a result. That means it will have a property, boolean property, yes or no. So let's try to add an action, that is AWS Lambda, and you can give a name here. I will give a name, process customer flow, and inside this we will have an ARN which we have selected. So we should have an ARN here, function name, yes. So it is try to fetch the function name. So this is the function which has been created. Okay, so we will try to add this function. Okay, now we will try to add a choice. Okay, that means we will try to add a flow. Okay, and after the invocation of our Lambda. So let's try to add a choice. Okay, now if you see this is the choice. Okay, and this has a rule, and this rule has either true and a default is as false, and or vice versa. So depending upon the property which is either true and false, we are going to process with our next step. That means either we will try to send an SMS or send an email, or we are trying to add an entry to the DynamoDB. Okay, so we are going to add a rule here. Before adding a rule, let me show how to add a payload, or how to extract a property from a payload. So let me launch a duplicate tab, and we will try to go to our Lambda first. And yeah, let me go to Lambda, AWS Lambda. And inside the AWS Lambda, so we are returning some response in a JSON format. So this is our customer function. And if you see, if I try to test it, it is returning either true or false. So this is returning a JSON format. Okay, and we are returning a field called as validated, and we are having a property either false or true. So this is the payload, and from the payload I need to extract some of the properties, that is the validated properties or a status code property, or you can say a body property. So in our case, I need to return a validated property which has a property as true or false. So this is the Lambda, which after execution it is returning some of the response. So in our workflow, this is our workflow, and inside the workflow we need to pass this property to this choice state, and from this choice state we need to either decide whether it is a true or false. So inside the Lambda we need to go to output, and inside the output, let me expand this, and inside the output we can see this is a sample invocation task result, which has an executed version and which has a payload, and inside the payload which has a property called as car, which has colors, foo, and so on and so forth. So assume that we are returning some of the response from our Lambda, and we need to extract some of the payload. That means in our case we need to extract the validated property. Okay, so this is the payload and we need to extract the validated property. So from the payload, okay, from the payload we need to extract the validated property from this Lambda, and which has true and false. So we need to pass this to the choice state, and which will have a rule number as true, and this will have a false, and then we will add some other actions. Okay, so how to do that? So we have something called as result selector. So if you see, we have something called as transform result with result selector. What exactly it does? So it will use the result selector filter to construct a new JSON object using the part of task result. As you can see from the payload, I need to extract certain parts. That means I need to extract like color or foo or car or this SDK HTTP metadata. So with this help of result selector, I will select only a specific part from the JSON, and I will pass this to the choice state. So this, they have provided a certain format, like how we can do. So in this case we are using a status code. So assuming your payload has a status code and a body. So in this case we have something called as validated. So I will pass this validated dot dollar. That means I am setting up this property. That means I need to assign whatever the property which is either true or false. I need to assign this property to validated. So I will add validated dot dollar. So let's try to add it. Okay, I will add this, and I will add as validated dot dollar, correct, and I will close this quotation mark, double quote mark, and which will have and payload. That means I'm assigning this property. And if you see, if you are stuck, they have given you the syntax how you can extract the payload. So again, in this case, I put a double quote and dollar dot payload dot validated. So why dollar again? Okay, so why dollar dot again? So dollar is nothing but this is a complete payload, and inside the payload, so assume this is a complete payload, and basically this is a complete path, and inside the path we need to check the path, check a particular part, that is check a particular task that is validated. So this dollar dot is nothing but to check the whole path. This is the whole path of our complete JSON. And inside the whole path, we need to extract a certain property. That is why we have written dollar dot. That means it will extract from the payload. It will extract the property that will field only validated. Okay. So dollar dot payload dot validated. So if you see our result selector has been done. That means it will pass an output to a choice state and it will have a true or false, and then we are going to process with our SNS or DynamoDB. After that, this filter output with output path is optional. So that means whatever we have done here, this is completely optional, and we need to check this now. Okay, so we will check it. So before that, we will need to add a rule. So that is either true and false. So let's go to the choice state again, and inside the choice state, let's try to edit it. Okay, that means we will edit this rule and we will edit this rule. Okay, so let's try to edit and we will try to add a new condition. So now you can see we need to add a variable here. Okay, same how we added the variable in our Lambda. Okay, so here we will add a variable, something called as dollar, again dot payload dot validated. So from the payload, I need to extract this property validated, and here it is equal to, that means it is either a boolean constant, okay, and which will have a property as true. How simple is that? So from the variable, that means from the payload, I'm extracting a path validated which is equal to a boolean constant which is either a true or false. So I will save this condition, and you can see the choice, that means whatever the output I'm getting from the Lambda, I am passing this to as a choice, and I am adding a condition here as payload dot validated as true. And here we will try to add a new rule, or we will try to add a default condition. So if you wanted to add a new choice rule, that means if you don't return any result, you can add a new. That means if either if your Lambda is not returning true or false, or whatever it might be, it is returning a numeric constant, then you can add this in the rule 2. So right now I'm not adding in the rule 2, I am adding just two conditions, that is the default conditions. I will try to delete this. Okay, I will try to delete this condition first, remove, yes, and I will add only true and false. So this is how you add a new condition. Okay, in the next video we are going to add we are going to add new actions, that is the SNS and DynamoDB. That is, we are going to add DynamoDB and SNS to the workflow. That is, these are the two workflows, and obviously we are going to check, that means we are going to debug the whole customer workflow state machine. That is, we are going to test. That means after execution, we will execute this Lambda, we will invoke this Lambda, and we will pass a choice state, either a true or false. And after that, we will insert a data into the DynamoDB, and we will trigger a email to our admins. If it is a yes, then it will trigger an email, and if it is a no, it will also trigger an email, and we will see how we can do about it. So stay tuned for the further part of this project. We will try to complete. Thank you. Have a great day.